Um, I do want to also talk about what, in the meantime, what's happened to the Syrian economy. So, with the sanctions placed on Syria uh, by the U.S. and the West, that's crippled, of course, Syria's economy. The Syrian lira is, it used to be traditionally 50 pounds to the US dollar when I was growing up. When after I went to college, it actually got stronger. It became 46 to the US dollar. Now I think it's around 3500. It's gotten so weak. It's ridiculous.
Well,
And
I
so
mean, that's also something that's happening in economies around the Middle East. I mean, of course, Syria is like, but like Lebanon, in
Lebanon for sure.
The Egyptian pound. Oh my God, the inflation is insane.
Yeah, yeah. And
You
so
know,
that's another thing across the region, inflation.
yeah,
Um,
like
so
the
with
money just doesn't mean anything anymore. You know what I
right,
mean?
so we have the currency is a lot less valuable as it
Yeah.
used to be. There is the sanctions, so not as many goods are able to come in and out.
Mm.
Industry has been decimated in a lot of cases. There are some companies that are still running or just reopened, but for the most part, it's a war economy, right? So
Sure.
eh, you hear about people who, I mean, you have power cuts throughout many hours, water cuts, gas isn't available. I'm talking about, like, cooking gas, and then also petrol, so like actual gas for cars. I mean, it's a very very difficult situation to live in. People queuing and waiting in line for hours to be able to get some food, some bread, some gas for their cars, whatever. It's very very difficult. But then when you open up on social media and you check out like certain spots, and you see that restaurants are full of people, and the markets are full of people buying up stuff. And so what everyone asks is, oh well, where are people getting all that money from? It's a war economy. So one, you have a lot of the checkpoints manned by soldiers, a lot of bribes being paid, a lot of stuff being stolen, so a lot of corruption there. You have a lot of
Mm.
smuggling going on now. You have a lot of what do you call it, prostitution, that's taken off. And you see this in other countries that like are war torn as well. But then you now, this is an important one. Syria is becoming a narco state. So because it was forgotten for so long and is just,
Mm.
you know, people, the rest of the world just completely believes that Syria just is no longer an issue, and the sanctions are there. What the Syrian government did was, in order to survive and continue, you know, running the country, they started producing a shit ton of amphetamines. So there is a drug called, they call it Captagon locally, is what that's what they call it. And those, there are these pills that are being produced uh, on a massive scale, and they're being shipped to other parts of the Middle East as well as Europe. And every bust that happens, so like I think that the Italian police caught like a shipment, and each shipment is worth about $1 billion, right? Like that's how valuable these drugs are, and how much money is being funneled back to the Syrian government. But not only the Syrian government, the the um, the Syrian militia, the opposition militias in the northwest are doing it. The Kurds are doing it. Everyone's doing it. But primarily, one thing I read recently was that the people who really came in and brought in the expertise were the Afghan Shia militias that were brought in by Iran. So to produce the drugs, but then Hezbollah, they were their specialty is hashish. So they took up a whole area on the Syrian Lebanese border and grew like these giant hashish fields. But their expertise is, and what mattered most in this scenario was their distribution and logistics, smuggling of drugs. So
No, I mean
that's
this was the thing. Like every Israeli war with Hezbollah is like there was in I like in the last war. I remember there was an Israeli campaign to tell Israeli youth to stop buying Lebanese hashish and weed because
yeah,
that's I mean like Hezbollah was selling it to them. They were
yeah,
selling like it all came in through them. Like the best weed and the best hashish was coming from Hezbollah. As
yeah,
much as
yeah.
they claim to be hyper religious, the same with the
It's
Taliban. You
just
know
a
what I mean? Like
show. It's just
the
a show.
Taliban making opium and selling it to Russia.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
a, it's
totally.
it's
And
the same type of
Al
dynamic.
Qaeda and ISIS were using the same kinds of drugs, Captagon pills,
Hmm.
they were giving them to their fighters before they were going and fighting like the different groups they were fighting. Even the Americans, when they were fighting the Americans in Iraq and Fallujah, a lot of those guys were like wired up on drugs. And so like both sides, I mean, but the ISIS guys especially, and they would be able to fight for days, right? So yeah, but the sad thing though is that with that comes a lot of drug usage in Syria. I think the statistic I read was that they did this survey, a third of the people who responded to the survey said they knew a drug user. So it's pretty bad. So that's the current situation.
Yeah, but if
But
you've been
what's
going through this many years of war, like who wouldn't want to use some drugs? You know what I mean? It's
Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing. But in terms of like it's a transitional period, I think, when it comes to the government until the conflict ends and reconstruction begins. But one thing I read was that the Syrian government is using this as a message to the Gulf states, and that a lot of these drugs are making their way into the Gulf and into the underground Gulf party scenes, especially in
mm,
Saudi and all that. Princes are flying in plane loads of this shit, right? And so um, the message is that unless you go back to or reestablish ties with us, and essentially what that means is that reconstruction period begins, we're going to destroy your youth. And so that's
it's another form
when you
of chemical warfare, essentially.
it's man like the amount of levers available to pull are endless when it comes to like that part of the region, and that like it's just phenomenal how creative people can get.
Yeah.
um yeah,
Well,
but anyways, that's the I wanted to mention that about the like the current like state of affairs for people locally.
mm.